Trump administration nationwide their crackdown on immigration. In the San Francisco Bay Area late Thursday, law enforcement fired shots at a truck, which authorities say was attempting to back into a U.S. Coast Guard base. The Department of Homeland Security said 2 people were hurt in that shooting but are expected to survive. That location had been the site of anti-ICE protests earlier in the day. One demonstrator was hit with a projectile during the height of the rallies, which were being held to protest a previously planned surge of federal agents into San Francisco. The president actually called off those plans yesterday, that surge. This comes as we're also tracking tense scenes in Chicago, where protesters once again clashed with federal agents yesterday. Joining us now, NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Julia, what more do we know about those scenes overnight in San Francisco, and how are tensions there today, as well as in Chicago as well?
Well, what you saw there in Alameda was the result, or why all those people were there, is because there were protests that began when the president said he would be deploying National Guard to San Francisco in order to assist ICE and to crack down on crime there. He later called that off. He had a conversation with the mayor late on Wednesday night, and by Thursday, he said on Truth Social that he was going to let the mayor handle it, although he thought he could handle it more quickly to get crime down, but that basically any plans to deploy National Guard to that area were, at least for the moment, called off. But the protesters came out because they said they wanted to continue to show that they stood with the immigrant community. That is what the backdrop was when that U-Haul started to back into that place there where the Coast Guard were. That's where the Coast Guard do a lot of their operations. It's also been the site of those protests. They now say, DHS says that the driver of that truck is undergoing a mental health evaluation and was shot in the stomach. But as you say, Kate, no one is expected to have suffered a fatal wound from this incident.
Okay, and Julia, there are also multiple court hearings today on National Guard deployments to a number of cities. What's happening on the legal side?
Well, we just got a bit of news on that, actually, Kate. The judge in Oregon says that she is reviewing her previous decision that blocked Trump from deploying the state's own National Guard in Portland in order to combat crime and to deal with protesters there who had been, again, protesting against ICE operations in the area. She said that now that it has over that decision, she's going to consider whether or not she dissolves her order that blocked them. Also in D.C., the Attorney General of the district is asking that Trump withdraw National Guard troops here. There are about 2,000 in the capital area that continue to march around, often in tourist areas. Some people saying that it seems to be more of a message being sent than actually doing anything. This is the kind of thing that you're showing that we see every day here in D.C., but their plans are to stay until the summer of next year. This lawsuit could hamper the president's authority, but we should say, Kate, the president has more authority in the district because it's the capital of the United States than he does in these other cities where he has to pretend with governors and mayors.
All right, Julia Ainsley tracking all of that. Thank you. The leader of Ontario, Canada, says he is pulling the plug on a television ad about tariffs following President Trump's criticism of it. The ad, which had been airing to American audiences as well, slams the president's tariff policies using edited portions of a speech given by former President Ronald Reagan. Here's a short clip.
High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs.
Last night, the president said that he was ending trade negotiations with Canada, blasting that ad and calling it fake. The Ronald Reagan Foundation also commented, saying the ad misrepresents the speech. Let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. So, do we know why Ontario is pulling this TV ad? Is it because of the pressure from the U.S.?
Well, we got a statement from Doug Ford, who's the premier of Ontario. I want to read to you part of it because it really does answer your question. His tweet said, "Our intention was always to initiate a conversation about the kind of economy that Americans want to build and the impact of tariffs on workers and businesses. And speaking with Prime Minister Carney, Ontario will pause its U.S. advertising campaign effective Monday so that trade talks can resume." So essentially they're saying they want to continue to talk to the U.S. and realize that this ad is having a negative impact on that. Okay.
And Yamiche, the NBC News White House team, I know, had looked at that ad alongside the 1987 full radio speech by former President Reagan that it features. Can you give us some context? What was Reagan's speech about, and how does it fit in with President Trump's tariff policies?
Yeah, so this 1987 speech was about free trade, but the ad essentially cherry-picked part of the speech. So I want to put up the full speech for people so you can see that the highlighted portions are the portions that were used. But when you see it, it correctly reflects that Reagan defended free trade, but it omitted that he explained that his decision was to impose some duties on Japanese goods. And I want to put up another portion of that speech so you can really see what they use. The yellow part is what they use, the highlighted part is what they use, the other part is not what they use, but I want to read it to you. It says, high tariffs inevitably led to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Left out was that Reagan said, the result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. They didn't use the part that said, none the worst happens, markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industry shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Okay.
And Yamiche, President Trump is also expected to meet with China's president next week. He's about to head overseas. What can we expect?
We can expect, hopefully, I think what we can expect is that these two leaders, hopefully given what they've both been talking about, is this continued negotiation on a trade deal with China. The president this week said that at one point that he was going to essentially almost put a trade embargo on China because he was going to lift the tariffs so high because he believes that they are essentially trying to impose higher and higher tariffs on the world. We also saw the president sign an agreement on rare earth minerals with Australia, essentially trying to tell China, we don't need your rare earth minerals, and that can't be something that uses leverage against the U.S. So these two leaders are likely going to be talking along with so many other leaders about free trade and about tariffs, Kate.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor covering the White House for us. Thank you, Yamiche. Well, as we talk about tariffs and trade talks, let's talk about the price you pay. The latest inflation report is out. Despite the government shutdown, that report did come out. It was supposed to be released 9 days ago. The numbers indicate inflation crept up slightly in September. The Consumer Price Index shows prices are rising by 3%, as you see, year over year. That's a pace that we have not seen since January. Here to break it all down for us, NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung. So, Brian, where are we seeing these increases, these prices go up?
Yeah, Kate, well, that headline number of 3%, again, that's how much prices increased between September of this year and September of last year, does show that prices are still going up across the board in this country. But I want to point out that those numbers weren't as bad as some economists were expecting. I think maybe they expected the tariff impact to be a little bit higher. Instead, what we got was a little bit below expected report. And what we did see in this was that a lot of those inflation gains were also driven by energy prices, specifically prices at the pump, which many people expect to go back down in October because the price at the pump has been going down for winter blend reasons. The type of gas is different. But food and shelter costs, take a look at that. That is a huge cost for most Americans, only going up. These are monthly figures you're looking at by 0.2%. That was much lower and slower than what we saw in the month of August. So yes, prices are going up, but it's not as bad as some people thought.
And there was also a cost of living adjustment announced today that's sort of based on the numbers that you just outlined, right? And that's for people who are on Social Security. Talk about that.
Yeah, so this is the reason why we got this jobs report at all. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is supposed to be closed because of the shutdown. They brought their people back in because this cost of living adjustment needed to be made. You can see the yearly changes over time. The big bump was in 2023 when inflation was high and the cost of living adjustment to those Social Security paychecks were made accordingly. This year, that adjustment is just south of 3%. It's 2.8%, and that is the adjustment that was made based off of the CPI numbers that we got this morning. But again, that's what people who are receiving Social Security should expect in terms of the pay bump once those checks go out at the end of this year, beginning of next year.
Quick question. Next week, the Fed meets again. Do we expect interest rates to be adjusted down?
Yep, quick answer, which is that we do expect them to cut interest rates by 1/4 percentage point.
All right, Brian Chung, thanks so much. Time now for more consumer news.